Hi everyone, I'm Muyideen Dosunmu, co-founder at Gatepass. Um, I'm an indigene of Lagos State from Lagos Island, Isaliko. I'm actually supposed to be a prince of Lagos apparently, but here we are. I'm the third child from a family of six, and last child of my mother. I've been living the middle child and last child life very well. Um, in terms of entrepreneurship, and I'll get into that much later. I think maybe it's just a last born thing. I think that's what last borns just do. But that was never really the plan. Um, I grew up in Surulere with my brother and my mother. Went to Pampas Private School, and then eventually went to the secondary school of Pampas Rainbow College. Um, and then I was a science student doing architecture. And I remember when it was time to pick what course to do in school. And at the time, I was considering doing architecture, but when I got to Unilag to write my diploma exams, it was the last day of the extension, and when I looked at the subjects that were required for architecture, it said physics, and quite frankly, I detested physics. So I just picked a random course at that point, estate management. Picked a second course, urban and regional planning. And I think that began my journey into real estate. So just in and around when the strike was rounding up, I took the exam for KPMG while I was in school, and I was successful at that point. So started an internship just before I went to camp actually, and then I think that just changed how I thought about what I wanted to do in my career. After my internship with KPMG came back, I also said, okay, do you know what? Let me give real estate another go. At the time, there was a company called Bro. I think one of the multinational real estate players then that manage some of the key assets in Nigeria, like the Palm City Mall, Ikeja City Mall, and most of the Grade A buildings. And then I was like, okay, do you know what? I like how this looks. And randomly from my bedroom, I just applied. And I got a call back. That's when I met Nena, met Dolapo. And I was part of the first research team. And in and around the time while I was at KPMG, my brother was visiting a friend at, I think, one of these estates. I think it was Nikon. And he just comes back one day and he's just like so angry. And he's like, can you imagine these people that I went to see this person, they were doing this, what kind of nonsense is this? And to be honest, I just ignored them half the time. I was just like, okay, Pele, it will be fine. But he was like very obsessed with it and he was like, no, there has to be a better way to do this. And I think next week he comes to meet me and he's like, oh, do you remember what I was saying about this thing? I was like, yeah, I think I do. And he said, okay, so what about if you're trying to visit someone and then you create a code and then you send it to the person instead of using the notebooks that they use? And I was like, okay, this makes sense. But I was like, okay, let's see how it goes. And then he just kept on working at it. And that was really the beginning of Gatepass. And then we I guess, outsourced the initial development of Gatepass, got some software developers to build an MVP. After doing some surveys, speaking to friends, just visiting and driving around Lagos, visiting friends, and establishing that it was a bigger problem. Now, at the time, while I was still at KPMG, it was one of my colleagues right in the level, I think I was an associate then, right in the level beside me, Wale. So one of the smartest people at KPMG then, like very efficient, very smart, solid guy. And I mean, he has a digital journal called The Republic. And at the time, I had just been speaking to him about, okay, how this works. And coincidentally, obviously, his family was like a big real estate developer in the Nuri area. And me, I already had my own ideas about, okay, the conversation. But I could see like there was a lot of alignment in terms of how we thought about real estate, how we thought about the future of real estate. And Wale is one of the best storytellers and clear thinkers I know. And so that was how I met like one of my co-founders, Wale Lawal. at KPMG while we were working, got more structure. Then I came back to the firm, worked for another 6, 7 years, and I just still had that nagging feeling that this is what I should be doing full time. And so I left again. Initially, we were thought of it as improving estate management generally, and improving the experience for residents. So we took a very resident focused view to the problem. But over time, I think that conversation or that thinking had changed. And then at some point last year, 2020, I mean, I have bills to pay, quite frankly. And I was just like, yeah, Gatepass isn't paying my bills. I'm earning less than I was when I started my career. And so I I went back to work at a bank this time, actually, as the chief of staff to the MD of Lotus Bank then, which we were working towards the license for. And I think that period was actually quite transformational to me because I mean, I could see what it was like working in a startup that was funded, working in a startup with people that had experience, and just realizing that, oh, do you know what? Like, you need to step your game up and actually be serious about this and go after it. I think also it made very clear to me, like and to us at the time, the financial opportunities that were clear in the property management space. And so it sort of has changed how we think about Gatepass, because now what we think about Gatepass is we're providing means for property managers and owners to automate their residential payments and charges. So that's sort of my journey now, and that's where we are. So for us, Gatepass is for residential communities. So whether it's an estate, whether it's an apartment block, whether it's student accommodation, and quite frankly, whether it's even for country clubs, they're all use cases for Gatepass. And so for us, it's not just restricted to high-end communities, and we've tried to reflect this in our pricing. We generally don't put like any obstacles to communities setting up Gatepass. And really, what you're able to do, or what we've noticed, is that for property managers or for resident associations, their main focus is really around collections and collecting their bills. They want people to pay for their bills on time, and they want to make sure that what they've billed out, they're collecting. And so, how we've gone about solving their problems is really to digitize the operations in their estate. So, getting visitors in, making service requests, creating bills, and then create a way for them to send early payment reminders, be able to charge late fees when people don't pay on time, be able to provide incentives and rewards to residents that do pay their bills on time, and ultimately being able to restrict access to services when people have not paid. So when it comes to funding in Proptech, I think it's largely been a timing issue and an infrastructure issue as well. So for timing, what I think has happened is, and if you take it back to in the local context, what you call Proptech 1.0, you'd probably call that Property Pro, which was, what's the name? Property Pro before changed name. I think it was To Let, and then there were the Jumia guys, there was Hotbay, there was Ramp. We were trying to do something similar to what we're doing now. And that was sort of PropTech 1.0. And they started then, but a lot of the solutions or infrastructure that I would say was required to like scale those businesses in terms of easy payments gateways, in terms of identity infrastructure. So what Mono is building, what Paystack and Flutterwave are building, they really exist then. And the subset of people that were investing in startups was also smaller. Over time, you then had what I would say was PropTech 2.0, which was Fiverr, Estate Intel, Muster, I guess you could say ourselves at that point in time. And then we came up and I guess we continued. Now, I mean, obviously, the sad thing with PropTech and with entrepreneurship in general is that most ventures fail. And so for a lot of people, they weren't able to just, I guess, stick around. My sense has always been that, and it's more evident now, that Proptech is probably where fintech was in 2015. Some investors now have a better understanding of the space. It's easier to demonstrate proof of what is going on. So you can see this with Seso raising 500K this year. You can see it with Split, Estate Intel getting into Metaprop. You can see it with Bungalow coming out. And so you can just see that that there's more, it's starting to bubble under a bit. We have PropTech associations, foreign VCs as well have started reaching out. So things are really starting to pick up. Other thing to add is that when you then look at it from an opportunity standpoint, now that we have VCs that now understand the space and are putting money in, if you then look at PropTech is really around the built environment. And the built environment is, it's probably like the biggest market that you have that exists. So whether you're renting homes, people would always need to live in homes. You're selling homes, people always need to, I guess, live somewhere. Or you're financing homes. There's an opportunity there that's unparalleled that's being created. And when you then look at the African context of we're the fastest urbanizing continent in the world, Nigeria is one of the fastest urbanizing countries globally. And most of our cities and most of the homes that will exist in the next 20 years, quite frankly, don't exist now. So it's a market that's still largely white space. And I think it's never too late to get in. So that's my own view on funding. And yes, I think PropTech is really starting to take off.